Welcome to episode 95 of the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. In this episode, we're joined by Christian Bermudez, Assistant Athletic Trainer for the Philadelphia Phillies. With over a decade of experience across all levels of pro baseball, Christian shares insights from his journey through the minor leagues to the big leagues, lessons learned along the way, and what it means to support athletes at the highest level of the game. Enjoy the show. All right, Christian, welcome to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. Very excited to have you on for the episode today. You are currently an assistant athletic trainer with the Philadelphia Phillies, have had a ton of success as a big league athletic trainer, so we're excited to get some insights from you about the profession. Before we get started with the questions today, let's talk about your journey to the big leagues. Share with the listeners your path in athletic training, how it began, and kind of how'd you get into the profession?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sam, for having me on. Man, it's an honor to kind of be on here. I've listened to quite a few of the podcasts, kind of see how everybody's been doing around the league. It's always cool. Kind of, I see we've got like different perspectives of college and all that now. So it's pretty cool kind of to hear everybody say that. But yeah, man, for me, getting into the profession, honestly, like I was a big baseball guy.
Okay.
Grew up playing baseball. It's crazy. I never really got injured until I got to high school.
Okay.
Reason once I got into high school, I dislocated my right shoulder, 2 or 3 times, had 2 surgeries. So I spent a lot of time in what I found to be the athletic training room for the first time. Trying to first time getting that setting of athletic training, and obviously, a lot of time doing rehab at a PT clinic.
Yeah.
So that caught my eye. It really didn't sell me. It's something that I had in the back of my mind. I still wanted to play baseball, but unfortunately, no. After 2 surgeries on my right shoulder, I had to call it quits.
Yeah, time runs out for all of us at some point,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
yeah. So I was tough. So I went to college. I was one of those guys that really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet in college. I went to Valencia Community College first. Man, I changed my major from business to engineering to just general studies a day,
Yeah, you and
Try,
all of us.
yeah, still trying to figure it out, obviously talking to all my family members and seeing what they did. So then I decided, I did a big transfer to University of South Florida. So that was like spring '09. And I did all the general prerequisites for to get into any profession there, right? Any degree. And then I finally had a conversation with the counselor, and she finally guided me towards like, here's like the sports. Like, she knew I was into sports, so she guided me into all the sports degrees that were out there, and athletic training popped up again. I was like, okay, I had that seed already planted in my head. And I was like, all right, you know what? Let me go for this. Let me give this a shot. And I did my prereqs for about a year. I got into the athletic training education program at the time at the University of South Florida. I think I started in fall 2010. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. And it was as everybody knows, the athletic training program is a grind. So
Yeah,
it
no
was
doubt. No doubt about it. Yeah. And so you mentioned your time at South Florida. Do you feel like for those college students listening today, you feel like you were prepared to jump into pro baseball after time at South Florida? Or what was like the most important takeaway from school? Was it working hands-on with athletes? Was it the anatomy and the textbook stuff? What kind of prepared you the most for being a pro?
Yeah, so I would definitely say yes. It prepared me to get into the pro sports world once I graduated. That program at the time, obviously now it's everything's changed to a doctorate program now,
Yeah.
but at that time it was a 2-year program. I was still figuring out what sport kind of I wanted to get into, if I wanted to be, or what setting. I mean, like if it was
Hmm.
high school, maybe it was at a clinic. But I got, obviously being in the program, you get these different opportunities to go into different settings and kind of figure it out, right? Thankfully, my program director, my last setting was she was able to get me into the New York Yankees
Okay.
summer ball, kind of,
Mhm.
the spring training into GSL during my last spring. So that's where I met, Tim Lintich and
Yeah.
Alfonso Manucci at the time. Like Tim was the medical coordinator, Alfonso was the GCL trainer. So I actually did that for 4 months for my last semester of undergrad. And that was like the bell, that was like the light that kind of went off. I was like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. This is kind of like what I want to do.
Yeah.
And thankfully, like, after, graduation, obviously passing the BOC, I was able to not get into it right away, but I did so that was a non-paying internship at the time with the Yankees. So
Mhm.
after that summer, I wanted to explore like paying options because, after getting out of college,
Yeah.
it's kind of in
Gotta make
debt.
some money. Yeah.
So I had the opportunity to go to the Oakland A's Dominican Summer League team, and that's where kind of Jeff Collins. It's funny because I never met him. Always phone calls and emails during that process. But he's actually the one that hired me for that two
Okay.
month paid internship at the Dominican Summer League facility down there in the Dominican Republic. So that was my first, paying athletic training gig.
Hmm.
And then the 2 months of that, and then after that, December came around and kind of started applying for all the jobs everywhere, and that's where I kind of my first real taste of professional baseball with the Houston Astros.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's definitely it's such a long process from so much school and finding your way into the game and then figuring out if you want to stay in it and see if it's right for you. So cool to hear your story there. So you've spent some time, like you said, with the Oakland A's, Houston Astros. Now, been almost half a decade already with the Phillies. Um, what's kept you kind of like passionate about growing and learning through the profession? Also, talk a little bit about those mentors. So you mentioned Jeff Collins um, and other guys. Obviously, we'll talk about Joe Roush and Paul Buchheit from the Phillies. Has it been like mentors who have kept you passionate and keep you growing in the profession, or kind of like self drive that you have? What's after 13 or more years in the profession? What's kind of what keeps you going?
Yeah, it's crazy how one grows. When I first started off with my first job with the Houston Astros, I was the GCL trainer, and then the second year, they asked me to go down to the Dominican Summer League because I was one of the only trainers to speak Spanish.
Hmm.
And when I was down in the DSL with the Astros, the first I was there for 3 years total. So the first 2 years, I was like, man, I think this is like my calling, like to help to come to be down here, helping these young, not just Latinos, because we had 4 or 5 Australian guys there.
Okay.
We had 2 or 3 players from the Curacao. So I thought it was like my calling and I loved it. My calling to be at a place to help young teenagers grow and to make sure that they're healthy, right? Not to go through what I went through when I was, in high
Hmm.
school, getting injured and then having to stop playing baseball. So I was so passionate about like being there, helping these, when you're there, there's 14, 15, 16 years old,
Yeah.
and at the same time, you're like their dad, they have
Yeah.
nobody else around, you get knocks at 1 a.m. to get some Tylenol because they got a headache.
Hmm.
But it was great. I thought I was gonna be a DSL trainer for my whole career. I didn't think anything else. I didn't really at that time didn't want to move up. I thought that's where I was supposed to be. I think for young clinicians, it's always good to experience the Dominican Summer League because you get so much hands-on time. You get so much different. I don't know, different. I don't know how would you explain like different.
You kind of see things through a different lens and some perspective about what happens at the Dominican complex and what these
Yeah,
kids are dealing with.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. And it's just you get more experience down there in a year than you'll probably get an experience in single A or double A, with
Yeah.
the amount of like different injuries that you see, different illnesses that you
Resources, I'm
see.
sure, that you have
Yeah.
available to
So
you. Yeah.
it was a great kind of like start to my career. And I think that's what kind of like drove me towards like being passionate about like getting to the upper levels,
Yeah.
after third year there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because a lot of guys, I think, get into athletic training their first job at, the spring complex or instructional league, whatever that might be. And their sole focus is, I want to get to the big leagues. I think it's cool to hear you talk and share that you thought this lower level, maybe the lowest level, might have been where you are forever. I think it's cool and shows your passion for serving people. I think athletic trainers are, that's kind of how you guys are built, is you serve for others, which is really cool. I want to talk a bit more about your time in the DR and, coming from San Juan, Puerto Rico, different cultural background than, I grew up with or people here in the States. Did that kind of lend a hand in your optimism and excitement for the DR? Because I know a lot of people might be reluctant to go over there because they don't know what it's like, or it's scary because it's different language, or there's so many DR positions that are sometimes tough to fill. So, how did your cultural background and growing up kind of create that more optimism and excitement for going over there?
Yeah, I think that's why I was pretty much excited because obviously I'm Puerto Rican. I was born over there, but I wasn't raised. My dad was
Hmm.
in the army,
Yeah.
for serving 20 years, so we kind of moved around every 3 years around the U.S. But I thought that was like that's what something that like I wanted to do, right? Being Puerto Rican, I wanted to kind of go back to like my roots, they say, right? Like help those young international guys out, and that was what like at that time that was kind of like what I was striving for.
Hmm. Yeah, no question. And then obviously, we're talking today. You're with the Phillies, been there. It's your fifth year with the club at the big league level. Something maybe you never imagined would happen. Working your way through minor league baseball, I know that can be a grind. Did you, as you were working your way through, was it tough as you got closer to the big leagues to stay present? In Double A or Triple A, when you're at that point, you really want to make a leap each year. How did you go about staying present, just focusing on the task at hand when your ultimate goal is probably to get to the big leagues?
Yeah, yeah. That I think once I got back stateside and got to 17, I was the Latin American medical coordinator for the Astros, and then 18, I got back into the affiliate ball life in low A. Um,
Hmm.
Honestly, like the grind is I had a not easy one, but I would say like the coaching staff made it easy for me.
Hmm.
With the days and I had awesome managers, I had awesome coaches. Um, I think you'll hear some stories where athletic trainer might not have the best manager or best coaches, so those
Yeah.
years go a little bit long, right? But I had amazing managers there that would kind of be by my side and kind of help me guide me through the long years and dog days of the minor league life, which helped me out a ton. But yeah.
Was there a point, maybe Double A, Triple A, and I had Nick Jensen with the Brewers and Vic Scarpone with the Marlins, who are first year guys in the big leagues. I had them on last week, and we talked about being ready for the show. Basically, was there a point in time when you thought, sitting back, like my skills are where they need to be? I know the people I need to know. I'm ready, or does it kind of feel like you never know when that's going to happen, or if you're prepared for getting to the big leagues?
Yeah, I don't know if I really knew if I was prepared or not. Double A was great in Corpus Christi, Texas. It was
Hmm.
one thing about that you learn is like time management, really, because I was the only trainer there at the time. Our longest road trip was 15 hours, in bus. We're the southernmost city in that league, so it was a tough one. But I think you learn. I think when I got probably to AAA with the Phillies, that's when I kind of maybe had a sense of, okay, maybe I can make it. But still, even with the transition from Houston to Philly was a tough one. It was hard. It's not. I don't think it's. I think everybody that goes from organization to organization could probably say it's not an easy transition because there's such different like philosophies that go into
Yeah.
every head athletic trainer has a different philosophy, right? Jeremiah's philosophy is completely different from Paul's philosophy, right? So
Yeah.
I think getting that crossroad and then learning the new organization's philosophy was probably the hardest thing for me. And then getting to AAA and then having to learn new things, as well as being a AAA athletic trainer, was tough. But I think at the end of that year, I was like, okay, I got a little bit more experience. I got through a AAA season. That's when I kind of started thinking, okay, what's next for me? There's a bunch of trainers that have been in AAA for, they do, 5+ years. And
Sure.
it's get that experience there, which is great. And before they get the call up or promoted.
Hmm.
So I think everybody has their way of getting up there, but um, thankfully for me, it was 1 year in AAA, and then got the call up. It was a little bit different when I got the call up, but we kind of
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the transition. I want to talk about like big league life and responsibilities in a second here, but Jeremiah Randall, incredibly smart guy, so much experience with the Astros and Pirates and Dodgers, and long career there. Paul Blue Kite, same thing, tons of experience with the Red Sox. They have the same job title technically, but so different. Everybody is, like you mentioned. You talked a little bit about the struggles in learning philosophies and stuff like that. Are you now at a point where things are pretty comfortable? You work with the same guys every day. How important is that to like the consistency of staff? You guys have had you, Paul, and Joe, and others together for a while now. So talk about like the consistency, as a number of staffs have turned over consistently. But how does that kind of make you better at your job by having the same people around you?
Yeah, I think we have a tremendous staff right now, and
Hmm.
there's times where we don't even have to say anything, but we know where one person has to be, right? Like we've got to that
Yeah.
point, and if I see Joe coming inside after pitcher stretch, okay, that means in like 15, 20 minutes, I need to be outside for position player defense or position player stretch,
Hmm.
without even before we had to make sure, hey, this time, you go outside at this time for pitcher stretch. I go out this time for BP or something like that. Now we don't even really have to communicate because now we kind of have that sense of, okay, once I see him walk through the door, I got a certain amount of time to go outside. The little things like that, help our job a ton, right? Like,
Yeah.
time management and everything like that. But Paul, Joe, and then we have our PT Alex, who came on board in 22, which he's been a tremendous help to us as well. And I think that's the one thing that you see with big league staff, and like staffs are kind of growing little by little now,
Oh yeah.
which has been awesome. Like it's like player care is always number one, right? So we want to make sure end of the day, like our players are being taken care of. Everybody needs what they need to make sure they're playing at 100% or as close to
Hmm.
100% outside. So
Yeah, yeah, no question about it. And so you talked about time management and how, not even needing to talk to Joe, just knowing what he's thinking is such a benefit in terms of efficiency and getting things done quickly. How do you guys go about structuring days with a game during the season? I know, you're off right now, but when you're back into it tomorrow, what's like a typical day for those out there who may think an athletic trainer shows up at batting practice and leaves right after the game, which is incorrect. Talk about the structure and the importance of structure for a staff like you guys.
yeah, our structure. So kind of like talking about our daily schedule. Let's just say we have a game 6:45. Usually we have a big performance meeting. I would say around 12:30 that day, um, which is the manager, bench coach, most of the coaches, analytics department, strength and conditioning, um, dietitian, all the athletic trainers and physical therapists. So
Hmm.
there's about 20, 30 people in that room to go over every single player on our roster, just to make sure everybody's on the same page with everybody. We go over details, as much details as possible, right, for everybody. We try not to have this meeting so long, but we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with everybody.
Hmm.
After that, we kind of divvied up. For us, I don't know if any other organization does this, but like for us, one athletic trainer has at least one starting pitcher. It just kind
Yeah.
of, that just kind of ended up how it is, right?
Hmm.
So let's just say for me, if Christopher Sanchez is starting, since we have Paul, Joe, and myself, and then Alex Plum. If Christopher Sanchez is starting that night, then we usually have two athletic trainers in the dugout in the game time, then two athletic trainers inside doing any kind of rehab or treatments that's needed. or getting relievers ready. Um, so in that sense, if Sanchez is starting, I'll be on the bench. I'll start on the bench with him, with either Joe or Alex, and then once Sanchez is done, we'll kind of flip flop. So if Sanchez goes 7, I'll go inside with him, do his post arm care stuff,
Yep.
and then the other 2 guys would kind of flip flop with us, go on the bench, just so not one person. There might be times where one person is covering all 9, but just give us a little bit of a break too, like
Yeah,
a little bit of a relief, kind of, so we're not
for
kind of
sure.
peaking ourselves.
Yeah, I know a lot of our listeners might think that you guys sit in the dugout and get to watch the game, but I think many of your colleagues across the league have told me how you don't watch a game like a fan. You're not sitting there enjoying it. You're on the lookout for everything. You're observing, seeing what's going on. So talk about a bit about that. Like when you're in the dugout watching the game, um, how do you view it? What are you looking out for, compared to just sitting and watching a game as a fan?
Yeah, it's definitely flip side of enjoying it and watching the game. Obviously, if the team's doing good, we got a little bit of enjoyment. But at the same time, like you said, we always have to be on the lookout for anything that's happened. It could be if a guy hits a triple, making sure we know he's gonna hit a triple, but making sure how's his gait, how's he
Yeah,
running, is he limping, did he touch the base right? Like small little details like that we kind of pay attention to.
yeah.
I remember like 2 weeks ago. Um, it was the bottom of the ninth. Stott was on third. It was a pass ball, and he scored to win the game. But he came up with his hand. I saw his hand kind of jar into the ground, and obviously everybody's celebrating. But I'm out there like worried. Probably have a smirk on my face, but I'm worried. I'm
Yeah.
looking at the play. I know he's down. I see his hand kind of crumbled up. I'm like, oh man, that's not good. So I have to go out there, kind of serious face on. Everybody's cheering. Everybody's excited about it. But I'm over there trying to get through the players to make sure he's all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then after that, after we know that he's all right, okay, now we can celebrate.
Yeah, that's a great example of just how it's different. You don't want to be the downer and come in and tell people to settle down, but you gotta do your job. That's super interesting and good kind of insight for our listeners that might not realize everything that goes in mentally to being an athletic trainer. Christian, one thing that I think is super interesting is you have your guys who you take care of more than others, I'm sure, and starting pitchers like you mentioned who you take care of. Um, Talk about building that trust, how that relationship grows, how a starting pitcher prefers that you're with them, not to slight anyone else, just a relationship that you have in place. Talk about how that being a younger guy in the game and how it takes time to grow that trust with the athletes.
Yeah, definitely, especially at this level, and being one of the younger athletic trainers and probably the least experienced at athletic in the athletic training world in our staff. Definitely takes time, patience with every guy. You got some big guys that your first year in the big leagues, like my first year in the big leagues, like they didn't want to look at me, because they know I'm the new dog. They
Yeah, what do you know?
yeah, they're like, oh, look at this guy. He's new. Welcome to the big leagues. But at the same time, like don't touch me, which is fine. The guy might be making $40 million, and
Yeah,
it's
got
okay.
different needs for sure.
Year by year, getting their trust, helping them out as much as just being there for them, right? Being open, being available. That's the huge thing about like a lot of these bigger guys. They want to see someone who's available at all times, not just in the corner taking a nap or in the corner
Yep.
doing nothing or on his phone. They want to make sure that you're present in the training room whenever there's somebody that needs something.
Hmm.
So it's a hard thing to get that trust, but it's baby steps. For me, what I had to do is just being there, be present in the training room at all times, and just start those conversations about like not just about baseball, but sometimes just about family, like asking these guys how their family's doing, how they're
Yeah.
doing off the field, not just if you kind of just be a recorder and just asking how your day is going and how you feeling today and saying the same thing every day. Those guys are
Hmm.
probably not gonna give too much trust, gain that trust as fast as asking them about their daily lives as well.
Hmm. Yeah, we're all people, and even though these are star athletes who are making upwards of 40, $50 million, there's still people and still want to talk about, joke around and mess around. And I know the training room is a sacred place for that.
Yeah.
I want to talk now, Christian, a little bit about your career highlights and time with the Phillies. Baseball fans out there know the run you guys have had. Been amazing to watch. Do you have a most memorable moment with the Phillies so far?
I mean, I think, yeah, it was crazy. Like, obviously, first year in the big leagues,
Yeah,
22, we go to the World Series. So it's like, wow, okay.
that easy, huh?
Yeah, not easy, but it was
Yeah,
like it was like okay, like one of those moments where you just like, for me, I was just like grateful for it. And it's obviously a year that I'll never forget. It was against my former team, which was
yeah.
made it more like fun for me. But at the end of the day, we came out with the L, but. Hopefully, one day we'll get back up there and get that ring that we're all kind of searching for.
Yeah, no doubt. And like I said, a couple of awesome years in Philly. The past couple, again, off to a good start this year. Being on a contending team with such big names and star players who are chasing that ring, does that change how you approach day to day as an athletic trainer, or does it you just put your head down and grind through and just do your best to take care for the players?
I think it does change. Like it's like to me, it's just a lot more. I feel like a lot more stressful.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to Alfonso last year when the Yankees were in town, and we're just chuckling about how stressful we are on a day to day basis because our
Mm-hmm.
teams they're built to win now, and the
Yep.
expectations are so high. And there for us, it's like there's little room for error. So we gotta, for as a Philadelphia Philly and our medical standards, we do pride ourselves on, our injury history and our limited ILs that we kind of have over the years, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that Paul, Joe, myself, and Alex are kind of, we hang it over our head. We want these guys to be on the field as much as possible, and we'll do anything for that. But
Mm-hmm.
it is having a contending team every year. It's very stressful. It might sound like it's easy, but it's not. Like you got long days, you got off days that are really not off days because most of the off days we're in there
Mm-hmm.
treating players, making sure they're ready for the next day. So
Yeah.
in the big leagues you get, I don't know what it is, 20 off days I think a year or something like that, and
Yeah,
some
it's crazy.
yeah, some of those were in there for treatments at least in the mornings, getting things done. So
Mm-hmm. And I know you talk about the stress, very valid. I think everybody would agree. The other side of that is just the awesome moments that happen in contention, playing cold weather October baseball in Philly. Just awesome scenes for even myself who's just watching as a fan of you guys. We've all seen some of those great moments at Citizen Bank Ballpark, the crowds, the just incredible atmosphere. What's it like being in the dugout for some of those awesome postseason moments for the Phillies with such a passionate? We don't even talk about the passionate fan base, but what's it like sitting there for you and just hearing the roar?
yeah, it's can't lie, it's pretty awesome. Like I get goosebumps right now just thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's awesome, but at the same time, you got to keep your cool, right? You got a game going on. You kind of have to focus everything else out. You got to take the crowd noise out of it. You got to make sure everybody's good on the field. You got to make sure every half inning,
Mhm.
nobody needs anything down in our stretch dungeon down there. Making sure everybody's on the same page, making sure the coaches are aware of every little thing, right? Like for me, you just can't be caught up in the moment,
Yeah.
because that one time you're caught up in the moment, there might be something that's going on that needs your attention, right, at that time. So,
Sure.
obviously, it's a awesome feeling, but I think we all know that you gotta. That's the time to kind of lock it in times too.
Yeah. No question. Shifting gears a bit, we talked about Paul Bukite, head athletic trainer, Joe Roush, longtime assistant athletic trainer, and Alex Plum over there in Philly. What's it like, working under guys who are so passionate about the profession, so interested in research and growing? How has that kind of pushed you to be better, working with Paul, Joe, and Alex every day?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't lie. I'm not gonna lie. I've in years prior, I've read not so many articles, right?
Hmm.
I think Paul and Joe and Alex have all pushed me
Yeah.
to get more into it, right? Like there's times where I see Paul at the end of the day, like he's in the hot tub with his article,
Yeah.
article in hand before he goes home, So I think that's pushed me to kind of continue that path as well, every week, or at least for me, kind of starting to get into it, once one article a week to kind of start me off on the right foot and kind of start getting all this knowledge that they have as well. I think that's the one thing about being the younger athletic trainer. I get to see how these guys kind of work on a daily basis and feed off them,
Yep.
and they helped me out tremendously. I'm thankful for those guys in the office, and we're always laughing and yelling at each other at the same time, butting heads, and it's always good and bad moments that we always have. But at the same time, we're there 7 months, 7, 8 months a year, whatever it is, and we're pretty much a family. So it's always going to be your highs and lows. But they've been awesome to work with. Paul's had our back tremendously ever since he's got up here, and he fights the
Hmm.
front office for us. Thankfully, me, Joe, and Alex don't have to fight those battles, but he's willing
Yeah.
to go to the death of him to go upstairs and fight for us, which is something that we love from him.
Yeah, he's a loyal guy. There's no question about that. One day, like you said, one day that might be you fighting for a younger athletic trainer in a position like Paul's. You never know. When you think about kind of you're now the guy who's giving advice to younger athletic trainers. Number one, is that kind of weird to see yourself in that role? Like you are a senior, a guy in the game who's been around for a while. And also, what advice would you provide for younger athletic trainers hoping to get into your position one day?
Yeah, it is. It is weird. I'm 37 years old, and it is weird to kind of still like be that guy to kind of give advice to our younger athletic trainers, to our
Yeah.
be kind of like that mentor to them. We do have like a mentor program in our system that we have, at least one athletic trainer that we kind of guide throughout the year, which has been awesome. That kind of Paul and Joe created.
Yeah.
So that's been great, and kind of lifted up my like demeanor to continue to help, right? But yeah, advice for like young athletic trainers is always going to be, it's especially in baseball, it's not something that's easy for any setting. I feel like any setting is not easy, but I feel like as a young athletic trainer, getting the background and getting the internship into the setting that you want is going to be huge.
Hmm.
If you go into a setting and you don't have any experience about it or of it, there's probably a likelihood that you're not going to like it, and you're just not going
Sure.
to like that internship or whatever it is that you're doing, right? Like I know the PBATS internship is great for getting young students to these affiliates, and so they could kind of see how the day in day out of the grind is at a affiliate ball, and maybe
Yep.
it's something they do want to do, but there's a lot of people that say, oh, I got
Turns them
into it,
away.
and hey, yeah, I don't want to do
Yeah.
this, which is
Yeah.
fine. It's just you rather find out early than later in life.
Sure. No, that's great advice. It's not always what it seems to be. Once you get on the inside, it might be better than you imagine. It might be something that you don't want to pursue because it's too much work, which is
Correct.
totally
Yeah.
fine. To each their own. Looking back on your time, Christian, when you were coming up and kind of figuring out, is this what I want to do? Once you decided it was your path, was there anything throughout your path to the big leagues you may have done differently, or any lessons you may have wished you learned earlier to make things easier for you?
I feel like I should have one research more. Read my articles a little bit more,
Yeah.
and two, like just getting to know I feel like every single modality out there that can be helpful, right? Like not
Yeah.
every modality there's no holy grail in a modality, right? But I feel like, there's so many different modalities out there now that all these vendors are kind of throwing at us. But, getting to know each one is always good so that we can make the self-educated guess of which one is best for our athletes.
Sure.
Going up into the minors, I really didn't do any background into any modalities. It was always just, Eastham and ice, back in the day,
Yeah.
So I wish I would have kind of researched a little bit more, got more out there, and kind of see it on like just on my end, kind of see what works best.
Yeah. Well, you're in a great position now with Paul and Joe, who are obviously well versed in all the research and very up with the new research and what's going on there. So I'm sure you're learning a ton from those guys. Well, Christian, to wrap up today's episode, we always finish with a quick Q&A segment called Extra Bases here. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions to let you share some insight about your favorite things about athletic training and baseball. So we'll kick it off at first base. Outside of Philly, what's your favorite athletic training room to work in the big leagues?
Ooh, favorite. It's crazy because Cleveland, we just got back from Cleveland and they did a whole remodel.
Yeah, big project this year.
And visiting side, and that visiting side is top notch. I mean, it takes about a mile to get to the dugout, but they did a really good job over there. Just space wise, right? Like the best thing for an athletic training room is space, just so we could kind of work out of it and we can do our own thing. But they like, shout out to them. They did a great job over there. But there's other ones out there that I'm kind of curious. I know LA did a new one. Before it was okay. It was nice. I think the whole stadium is just speaks for itself. I think that's why I made the athletic training room nice, just because you're in Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, no question. And shout out to Lonnie Soloff and the guys in Cleveland. I know it was a long time coming and a long project for them, but cool to hear that it's looking awesome over there. Moving on to second base, we talked about you watching a game from the dugout. I always think you guys are in a crazy vantage point where it's you, it's players, it's coaches and managers. That's it. What's your favorite big league stadium to watch a game from the dugout?
Wrigley Field, no, without a doubt. It's just, it's this history there. Again, getting goosebumps now, just to kind of think about it. It's just an amazing stadium. And the way they've been able to kind of upkeep that stadium to make it look old, even though it's new. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, very common answer, and I wouldn't blame anybody for saying like Fenway and Wrigley are just so historic. You can't beat it. Moving on to third base, Christian. Outside of the game, when you guys are on the road, which is a ton, obviously, what's your favorite city to visit?
I'll definitely have to say probably Chicago. Chicago is, good hotel. Location of the hotel is family friendly. We did a family trip last year there, the Phillies, and all the families were there and they enjoyed it. My kids, first time in Chicago, and they loved it. Close to the ballpark, close to the airport. So I think that's the one.
Yeah, and definitely you guys get there in a good time of the year. You're not going there in December when it's 0 degrees. Exactly. So a benefit there. To wrap up today, moving on to home plate, we talked a little bit about this, but so when you came up with the Phillies your first year, did you ever have a singular moment where it was like, welcome to the show, I made it to the big leagues?
I definitely did. Read this answer before, kind of took some time. So I think it was 2022. First game of the season was our home opener. Just running out to that field during pregame introductions and hearing my name and having my family in the stands. It's always crazy because like I have a video on my Instagram. It was like that I posted in 2017. I took my family to opening day in Houston, and I recorded Jeremiah running out with all the other athletic trainers, and in the caption I said, "One day my name will be announced."
That's awesome.
That was a pretty cool little full circle moment for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you obviously worked extremely hard to make it happen. So, props to you and obviously your family for supporting you along the way. Well, Christian, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate your time. I know you guys are super busy, trying to make another playoff run here in Philly. But best of luck to you, Joe, Paul, and Alex, and the rest of the guys the rest of the way.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate all your time, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. For more information about PBATS and athletic training, visit pbats.com. See you next time.